Welcome back. This is Repeat, and as you know, I've been summarizing module 1 to 20 for course 2, Real Estate Salesperson Program, delivered by Humber. And we only have about 3 modules left, so I'm gonna not waste any time and let's get through them as well. So in module 17, lesson 1, it's an introduction to conditional clauses. So there's about 27 pages of reading, but we can skip to the end and see what they say. So a condition precedent. A condition precedent provides that if the condition is not fulfilled or waived, no binding contract has been formed. The party must take action to create a binding agreement. The characteristics of a condition precedent include when the offer has been accepted by all parties, there is no binding agreement. Upon acceptance of the offer, the parties are placed under some degree of obligation related to the terms of the accepted offer. Notice must be provided to the other party within the time period identified in the condition for the proposed transaction to proceed. A binding agreement is formed when a notice is provided indicating the condition is either fulfilled or waived. If the notice is not provided indicating the condition is either fulfilled or waived, the offer becomes null and void. A condition precedent. A condition in an agreement calling for the happening of some event or performance of some act before the agreement becomes binding on the parties. And then a true condition precedent. A true condition precedent is used when the nature of the condition requires the approval of a third party and the contract is not capable of being completed without fulfillment of that condition. And a condition subsequent. A condition subsequent provides that if the party does not wish to proceed with the proposed transaction, they must take action to terminate the agreement. The characteristics of a condition subsequent include notice must be provided to the other party within the time period to terminate the agreement. If no notice is provided, the agreement remains binding and either party can demand the sale be completed. There is no waiver provision required as a binding agreement is in place upon acceptance of the offer. If the condition is not fulfilled exactly as described in the agreement, the party can achieve the same result as a waiver by allowing the time period to pass. This results in the agreement remaining binding, whether the condition has been fulfilled or not. So they just talk about 3 conditions I hear. Let's go over it because I don't really understand this. Let me go over it again. There are 2 methods of drafting conditions. Conditions are present in the profession: condition precedent and condition subsequent. A condition in an agreement calling for an event of happening and an act to be performed before the agreement becomes binding to the party. A condition subsequent is a condition referring to a future event that upon its occurrence causes the contract to be no longer binding to the parties. Oh, we already read that, okay. A condition precedent clauses. So the condition precedent is number 1. Who is to do it? Who is to pay for it? What is to be done? Within what time limit? What happens in the event it is not done? Can it be waived? And then the condition. So basically that's it. Sorry, let me go back. Most conditions in a residential transaction are for the benefit of the buyer, although the category of the condition can be and the same for each buyer. There can be various options for the condition that can be selected based on the specifics of each trade. Common conditions in a residential offer include obtaining financing, having the property inspected, confirming insurance can be obtained, sale of a buyer's property. While many offers may contain the same conditions, as a salesperson, it is important to understand how different property types will require different conditions in an offer. For example, condominium. The review of the condominium documents such as a status certificate, multi-unit residential, and an inspection to confirm fire and building code compliance. Rural property, testing the well and septic system. Waterfront property, confirming the legal status of any improvements such as a dock or a boathouse. Investment property, reviewing the leases and financial information. Vacant land, obtaining a building permit and confirming available services. Under each of the above situations, a condition can be written as a condition precedent. What is important when drafting a condition precedent clause is to ensure the 6 components are identified and each is accurately and fully completed. As a reminder, the 6 steps to ensure a condition precedent clause contains the required information. It is who is to do it, who is doing it, who is paying for it, what is to be done, within what time limit, what happens in the event it is not done, can it be waived. Although in most instances the final component, the condition may be waived, is applicable. Not all conditions will permit the party to do this. Prior to drafting a condition using the condition precedent method, ensure the party is able to waive the condition. A true condition precedent requires action by a third party independent of seller or buyer. Because satisfaction of the condition is dependent on third party, the seller or buyer cannot waive the condition. For example, a condition might be dependent on the advisory committee providing the consent to change the zoning bylaw. You will learn more about it in this lesson. Okay, cool. In certain instances, a condition must be fulfilled exactly as it's detailed in the offer for the proposed transaction to proceed. This type of condition is known as a true condition precedent. This condition must be met. It may not be waived. No waiver provision is possible because the condition must be fulfilled for a binding contract to be created. Okay. I'm just going to go over the last one. The second method of drafting a condition is by using condition subsequent format. This method is distinctively different, and characteristics of a condition subsequent should be fully understood to ensure appropriate action is taken when the party is completing their due diligence. A condition subsequent is in many ways the opposite of condition precedent. It provides that if the party does not wish to proceed with the proposed transaction, they must take action to terminate the agreement within the time limits. The characteristics of a condition subsequent include the following below. Upon acceptance of any offer, there is binding agreement between the parties within an option to terminate under certain circumstances. Termination of the agreement can only be based on the defined circumstances identified in the condition. The conditional agreement will provide unless the buyer terminates the agreement within the time allowed. Notice must be provided to the other party within the time period to terminate the agreement. If no notice is provided, the conditions within the agreement are deemed to be waived, and either party can demand the agreement to be completed. Unless the buyer terminates the agreement within the time limit, the conditions are deemed to have been waived. The agreement remains firm and fully binding on all parties. So that was lesson 1 in module 17. Let's move on to lesson 2, conditional clauses relating to financing. Let's go over the summary. Arranging a new mortgage. There is usually a clause included in the agreement of purchase and sale stating that the offer is conditional upon the buyers arranging a new mortgage. Unless a sale of a property is an all-cash offer, the amount of the new mortgage is typically the sale price less the down payment. When using a clause to arrange a new mortgage, the timeline typically is 5 to 10 business days to fulfill the condition. Assuming an existing Assuming an existing mortgage. There may be circumstances when a seller will offer the buyer the option to assume the existing mortgage. The assumption would typically be dependent upon approval from the lender that currently holds the mortgage on the property. A seller may offer the buyer the option to assume the mortgage if the market conditions are slow. This may make the property more attractive to a buyer. A buyer may want the option to assume the mortgage because the interest rates with another lender might be higher than the current lender. Seller take back mortgage. In a STB mortgage, the seller is the actual lender, mortgagee. I hope I say that's right. The seller could improve the marketability of their property through attractive terms. STB mortgage also provides the seller with an investment opportunity. The buyer could avoid certain costs and paperwork typically associated with conventional lenders. And then lesson 3 is supplement conditional clauses. Home inspection clauses. Home inspection clauses allow the buyer to have a professional home inspector inspect the property prior to finalizing the sale. Depending on the outcome of the home inspection, there might be issues that the buyer wants the seller to address. Insurance clauses. In order to obtain a mortgage from a conventional lender, the buyer must be able to obtain insurance for the property they are intending to purchase. In some cases, the buyer may not be willing to pay more than a certain amount for insurance. Sale of the buyer's property clauses. Another common clause that is included in an agreement of purchase and sale is the sale of the buyer's own property. If a buyer finds a house before selling their own, they would include this type of clause. Many sellers may not want to accept a sale of a buyer's property clause, so the buyer would include a clause stating that the seller can still offer the property for sale and accept offers during the conditional period. A seller might get a second offer, which would then affect the original buyer's conditional time period. Clauses for a lawyer's approval. There are certain circumstances where a salesperson will recommend that either the seller or the buyer seek a lawyer's approval for the agreement of purchase and sale. That was lesson 3. And let's moving on to lesson 4, environmental and zoning conditional clauses. Pretty simple, straightforward actually. Environmental clause. It is important that you understand the impact of environmental issues on real estate transactions. You should have a general knowledge of environmental considerations and potential hazards to help a buyer determine the appropriate clauses to include in an offer. Fuel tank clauses. Fuel oil tank clauses. Fuel oil tanks, whether buried or above ground, can present problems. The presence of a buried oil tank, if known, must be disclosed to a potential buyer as it is a latent defect due to the potential of the environmental contamination. A buyer may want to include a clause that gives them the opportunity to verify any potential environmental concerns with the property before offer becomes firm and binding. Vermiculite and asbestos clauses. While vermiculite is not a health concern on its own, some vermiculite insulation contains asbestos, which can be a health hazard when particles become airborne and inhaled. If the property has been insulated with vermiculite containing asbestos, then the seller must disclose this latent fact. It is in the buyer's best interest that a clause is included to address any vermiculite concerns. A buyer may want to include a clause that gives them the opportunity to verify any potential environmental concerns with the property before the offer becomes firm and binding. Zoning clauses. There might be some instances when a buyer may be interested in purchasing a property for a different purpose that is what is currently zoned for. In some cases, The buyer would want to include a zoning clause to ensure that if they cannot obtain a rezoning slash variance, then they have the option to not continue with the offer. Okay, moving on to lesson 5. Lesson 5 is practice summary activities, which I highly recommend you do that on your own. Let's see if we have any cool information in the module summary. Okay, we've already talked about this. Um, we've already talked about this. Okay, so this was module 17. I hope this helped. I'm gonna go over it again because I don't understand. I gotta understand one of these clauses. I think it's the subsequent clause that I don't understand properly. I'm gonna go back and read it again. But I hope you learned something. I hope this helped. If yes, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much. I wish you have a lovely evening, and thank you.